time with my father in his last months after moving him closer to where I lived. And I think it was the last memory I had of really interacting with him. Um, I want to say less than a week later, he was in bed and not really moving and responding. Um, but we had gone out on the patio at the assisted living where he lived. Wheeled him in his wheelchair out to the front porch and sat in his chair, and we often listened to music when I was with him. He liked the 50s and 60s music. He liked Roy Orbison and different artists and things. I have this wonderful memory of sitting on the assisted living had like a big front porch, with a railing. And we sat there and listened to the music and interacted with some of the other residents who happened to be on the porch. And it was a beautiful mid-October day, early October, I guess. And at one point, he even stood up from his wheelchair and held on to um, the railing of the porch. And it just reminded me, they had lived on the lake and looking out at the water and just that kind of looking off into the distance kind of thing. So there was no water to look at. But it was just that kind of looking out beyond and just kind of a contemplative look on his face. And I remember how much we enjoyed this. And shortly after, the time frame is not exact in my head, but my sister was going to be coming to visit. And I remember thinking, Dad's wanted to go. When I told him we were moving him here, he asked if there was water. He'd always lived where there was water. He liked looking at the lakes. And I said, maybe we could take him for a ride because we had only taken him out. We moved him in June. We went for ice cream one time. He went in and out of the hospital, but I never got to bring him to our house. I was like, well, if I get him in the car, my sister's coming in town. We could go and drive by a lake somewhere and he could see some water. So I kind of had this idea in my head. And it was actually, he declined fast, kind of quickly. And it was the day before my sister was supposed to come that I said, you need to come now. He's not doing well. And so I didn't get to go out like I wanted to look at the lake yet. I have just that beautiful memory of being on the porch with him and just being in the moment with him. Um, and it just feels good to think about that I did at least take the time to do that.
Well, hello, this is Don.
And this is Gina with Focused Healthy Family. Today's podcast is number 218, and we're starting a new series. We're calling it Sandwich Generation in the Movies. And we're going to reflect on different movies and TV shows and things that kind of incorporate this idea of the sandwich generation. Don and I have talked about the TV show This Is Us and A Million Little Things. There's been a lot of different shows, but also other movies that start to really portray um, the dynamics of managing aging parents and raising kids and just that intergenerational dynamics. So Don and I watched the movie As They Made Us, and we just kind of rewatched it, and we're just going to reflect on.
Well, when you were just talking about your dad sitting at the on the holding on to the bench and looking out, when you were saying that whole idea of on Golden Pond came to my mind because that was like a favorite movie of your dad's being able, and you know I don't know if he was reflecting on that, but that's what I was thinking about when you talked about him standing there looking out.
Well, that's the reason they bought
Yeah,
a house on the lake is from the
yeah,
movie on Golden Pond. He wanted to retire on a lake like that, and that was his dream. And they built a house down in Lake Murray, South Carolina. That's when they left Pennsylvania, and that was supposed to be the retirement home.
yeah,
And they lived there for 15 years, and they built this big house that had many stairs and levels and a dock, and they realized it was too much to keep up with it. And
yeah.
it was my dad had diagnosed with Parkinson's after they moved there, and him and my mom had hips replaced, and they realized it was too much to keep up and maintain. And I can imagine how tough it was. My dad helped design that house, and that was
Mhm.
where he pictured himself staying um, until he died, really.
Yeah, that.
And then they moved to a 55 plus community and found there were small little lakes, very small bodies of water on the community, and they picked a house that had an overlooking to the water. Um, and when I told my dad we found a place for him to live, he said, "Is there water there?" And it was kind of like, "Oh, shoot, no, there's not, Dad." And I don't know if I could have found a place with a
Yeah, I
water
was gonna
view
say that's kind of
or
hard, but
not, but it was just, that's what he wanted. Like he was totally okay with this idea. He knew he didn't want to be a burden. He knew it was a lot of my mom. He kept saying, "Is there somewhere I can go?" Um, so yeah, that's why I had that idea of giving him that day out in the car and um, um, to go see some water. I kind of had wished I got to do that. Yet watching films like As They Made Us, which was written and produced by Mayim Bialik, um, and it has glimpses or themes from her personal life, but it's not autobiographical. It's not particularly about her family, but there's elements of that there. I've heard her speak on it on a podcast, and from reading about it. But my dad in his later years, just the way Dustin Hoffman looked in the movie,
something very much like
it
in
brought
it.
back memories. And just they didn't define the degenerative illness in the movie that Dustin Hoffman, who plays her dad, the character's name is Abby, the main character. They didn't really define it, but it was degenerative, and he was having trouble with his memory. He was having trouble walking and moving, and just the way he sat there with that gray, because he kind of has gray curly hair like my dad. I mean, he has
He did. He did.
hair like my
He,
dad. My dad's got a big nose,
yeah, he did look a lot like
and
it.
just that kind of lost look, and it just really tugged at me. So we're watching this movie where there's not, it portrays. We'll get into that in a minute, but it portrays the dynamics of in
Well,
family when there's been verbal and even some maybe physical abuse, and when there's challenges with the relationships with the parents, and now all of a sudden you got to deal with a parent with an illness. And it was sad to watch this, but it was also like I feel good about
yeah.
my experience with my parents. And yes, things weren't always perfect and there were issues in our relationship, but I feel really good about the role I played helping him and my mom and the time I had with him in those last months.
Well, I remember it made as tough as it can be. I wasn't around for my father. Well, I was around for my father's, but not my mother's. But um, my family stayed together through it. They my my older brothers didn't really want to be in care
Oh, you're
of
talking about your mom,
about my
the care
mom.
of your mom.
Yeah,
Yeah, because your dad died when you were just
I was very
17.
young. Yeah,
So, um, but
but
when your
caring for
mom
my mom, it
passed,
was. But they didn't fight over it. None of us fought over any of it, like, and this one, it was interesting to the daughter and the son and
s-
how they dealt with it
so
was
spoiler alert, we're going to talk about the movie. So if you haven't watched it, pause now. It's a great film. Um, and like rewatching it again, or like picking up on things on it, because to me, it's really a reflection on a glimpse of someone's life, because they kind of go back and forth. You've got this divorced mom of two young boys, and um,
that's you're talking about the siblings though, because the parents weren't divorced. It was the
yeah. So the story is about Abby, the main character, is a divorced mom,
the
and she's has an estranged brother, and they kind of give you glimpses into that because of the parents are what some people might say toxic. They're, but narcissistic and um, emotionally abusive and hot and cold. There's just all these dynamics that have gone on in the family over the years. And as the son was growing into adulthood, he just stepped away. He wanted to move away to be close to his job, and um, his parents were critical and everything, and so he just took himself out. It was too much for him to handle, right? And he removed himself. And Abby, the daughter, was the one that was around, and what I felt from it was she felt like she had to be the caregiver. She was the one who was there.
Mhm.
And so just thinking about how different people deal with the situation, different situations, and now all of a sudden you got, you had this crazy dynamic with your family to begin with, and now dad's sick, right? And how is mom handling the issue? And it's wonderfully acted. Dustin Hoffman plays her dad, and Candice Bergman plays the mom. And it's definitely portrayed as a Jewish family, and so just the different family dynamics that go on, and
Oh,
just looking at how they kind of did the flashback thing where it looks up now and then you flash back to their childhood and you get glimpses of where how things led to be here now. So we don't have the 100% picture, but it like tunes you into those kind of unspoken things. And so Don and I looking at it from a perspective of conversation and communication. How do we speak to each other and how that affects our relationships with people? And
well, it gets tough too when you're wanting to help people out, but as we saw in the movie, the Abigail kept saying she didn't have her own time, and that's a lot of the dynamic of caregiving for your family or a loved one.
yeah, there was kind of an underlying theme there. Her boys were elementary age, and they're like, "Mom, can you do this for me, Mom?" And she's like, "Yeah, I'll help you." And then her mom calls her on the phone, and it's like, "Dad, fell. All right, I need you to help with Dad." And she just expected her to do things. It was interesting because it portrayed her mother didn't really know how to deal with her husband and his illness. They kept going to different
Mm.
doctors, and she wanted a second opinion, and she didn't want to accept the fact that he had this illness and things were changing. The daughter was hiring caregivers, and the mom kept firing them, and the mom wasn't dealing with it, right? The emotions of it. They kind of portrayed her as someone who didn't like really deal with emotions and things and was very harsh, very critical, what I
And
would call passive aggressive.
yeah,
In the movie, they talk about that they unofficially diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder. Um, and so just kind of always, um, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like pushing
kind
her daughter. You got to do this. You should have a column now. Her daughter was a writer, and you've got to have this by now, and you should be doing this, and just,
well, it's kind of this dynamic. She, I bet you outside of her daughter, she probably talked to people how great her daughter is and all of this, but when she's around them, it's the a kind of complete
yeah.
opposite in a way, you know.
And yeah, we don't know the whole picture,
Yeah.
but like looking at this film from a perspective of people can relate to different aspects of it, right? We all grew up with families where things were different degrees of toxicity, I'll say, or different degrees of dysfunction, right? Sometimes, it was just um, not good at opening up or not good at feelings to the point of emotional abuse. And even
Mhm.
this touched on possibly even, some physical abuse where there's a scene when he slaps her as a young girl because she's fighting with her brother, which was interesting that he took it out on her.
Yeah,
Um,
she was just trying to stop Nathan from doing some, I don't know what he was doing, but yeah.
um,
Well, there
so
was actually in one other scene where she was holding her nose, and you would assume it was him again doing
had hit
the
her or
slapping or
something.
whatever. So,
And yet he loved her and he had the caring side. He was kind of um, one extreme and the other. And then the mom was just this.
well, and I was thinking about it. We were, I think, talking about I was kind of questioning as to why the son didn't really want to deal with the mother. But I was thinking there was one scene in it where they argue and they're at the dinner table and the father tells them to leave. But in that, the mother was fighting right along with the father. She wasn't the mother going, "Oh, I wish he wouldn't do that," or she wasn't giving anything to him at all, to the
Yeah,
son
because
at all.
the son looks at his mom and says, "You love him more than you love us." And so
And
there was,
when he's telling her to get out, she was right there going, "Yeah, you get out." She didn't seem to have any love for him as a son, and I think that's
well,
kind of what
they
he
spoke to
saw.
the authoritarian parenting
Yeah.
and that the father was in charge and what the father says goes. There's a scene when so he gets married to this woman. They kind of blame her for him moving out on his own. And so she's just undermined the whole time. And they don't go to they were mad because they didn't go to some party of theirs. And they were asking to apologize to her family, and he's like, I'm not going to apologize for anything. And he's like, no one in this house apologizes. And it was kind of like, this is the way we do things, and we don't apologize for it. And um, yeah, and he even calls it his authoritarian parenting. And like, where does that get you, right? I talk all the time about how important it is to own up to our mistakes and admit them and acknowledge them. And if you're that authoritarian parent and you have to do what I say, otherwise you're out of here. And that's what they wound up doing is they pushed their son away. And what his way of dealing with this is, okay, I'm just disconnecting myself from the family. And then they came to his birthday party and all they did was criticize his wife and and he separated himself even more because that was kind of his coping mechanism to just remove himself from it. Um,
Well, it goes back. I was bringing this up just, I was thinking about, the father's right. And my, my father always backed up my mother. Whatever she said, he would be right there. I think it was really the opposite. Like you said, it was most of the time it was the father that was the kind of the head
But
of the
were
household
you
kind
still
of.
in an authoritarian household versus
No, no, it wasn't. That's what I mean. My father was.
no, but I mean your mother was what
Oh,
did you
no, no, it was, he would back her up, but he always made her like partner.
yeah, but I just no, I mean there's authoritarian parenting, there's different
Oh,
styles of parenting, right? So
I mean,
it was definitely more, I mean, most of us, well, a lot of us, I guess, in was a little bit more on the longs of you do what I say, do what you're told to do, but
there was kind of that. It
an
wasn't as
element of
heavy
that
though.
just
But
but
anyway, I'm sorry. That was just coming to my mind when you said that. But
um
great big pause.
yeah, I'm just reflecting on the notes we took over. There's so much more, and it's just so okay. So you have all this dynamic that went on with the family, and now you have to deal with caring for dad who's not doing well, and the mom's calling the daughter and telling her what's happened, and it's all on her. And this is a common thing. Even there's only two siblings in this film, and the one is the son just steps away from the family because of um, the emotional abuse and the difficulty there, and that was his way of handling it. And Don and I talked about, well, why did he do that? And why did Abigail feel like she had to step in and do things? It's like, well, we have different personalities and we have different ways of handling things, and she had much more of a caregiving personality and wanted to step in and help. And she also felt like she had to
Yeah,
because her brother stepped away. And yet, both of them were coping in their own way with this.
I was
You
going with
could tell
divorce
she
and
had done self-help things, she had done to better herself and to learn how to handle these things. Like you could tell she really,
she was trying. Yes, yeah.
yeah, like she obviously had learned that these strategies are not helpful, and she knew it wasn't worth arguing with her parents about the way, they did things.
Well, she was watching those as she was drinking wine. So I
Of the
thought that was
self-help.
kind of,
But,
but yeah, she
you
was.
comes from a generation and there's even people in younger generations who they do things the way they do them and they're not going to change. And this is just the way it is in my family. And I don't want to think about how I talk to people and I don't want to, change how I speak to people and, you know, um, the things that we talk about when we talk about EFT and when you talk about how you converse with people and how you make connections. But, what do you want for yourself in the end? Because, the son comes to see the dad before he dies, but Abigail's, stuck telling her mom, he wants to see dad, but he doesn't want to see you. Or, and she says he's not ready to see you yet. She does it so
Yes.
diplomatically. Like you can tell how much she's worked on dealing with communication herself because how she handles it. And yet, she's burdened that she's having
Yeah.
to juggle all this. And I see this, I've had, working with in occupational therapy and rehab settings. So a lot of families I got to meet, their parents were in short-term rehab after being in the hospital. And so I remember one woman saying, it's on me to take care of it. A lot of times it's expected if you're the daughter.
Mhm.
My brother has this going on, my brother has that. And it was almost like she was, well, that's just the way it is, and it's like they say they can't do it because they're busy with this or that or the other. So I'm the one doing it. So they just kind of accept that for one, which is interesting to me. And it's easy to not recognize the burnout, and ask for help because it's hard
Well,
to ask for help.
well, and the guilt. There's a lot of guilt in, like I say, the what would like we I think we talked a little bit about it. What would happen if nobody stepped up, if both of them walked away?
Right.
What, and so there's guilt by
The cat just batted my microphone. She pawed at my microphone, probably because she wants me petting her and not talking.
like a child we got going on there.
Yes. Yeah, like when you're a kid and you're on the phone and the
Phone and they
kid's
come
like,
at you. Yeah.
maybe that's why she comes in my lap when we're doing these podcasts because
She likes somebody to
just
talk
like
to.
a kid. She's like, no, pay attention to me. That was really funny. Um,
But yeah, we talked, like if they came to me and wanted help,
well, who
uh
would come to you? You saying they came to you.
well,
So it's most likely
like somebody like Abigail
Abigail. So the
probably because
daughter
she,
who's the one in the middle of it, right?
I would, be teaching her how to do the EFT for herself. I mean, you really can't do it for the parents at that point. There's no,
Well, you have to be willing. You have to be
well, yeah,
willing
you have
to
to be
work on
willing
your own issues because you've had people come to you that are the parent and they don't why their kids don't speak to them.
about that.
And so the person has to be willing, right? So, right, and to deal with those kind of issues and things.
And then, but getting her to learn how to cope with, I always talk about the EFT building, kind of building a shield for you as the more you work with it, that things that parents say or whatever kind of bounce off versus absorbing, because we tend to absorb, I would imagine Abigail absorbed a lot from whatever mom would say about stuff.
And
And
and that's what EFT, it is. Things that people say to us, whether it's what we say to ourselves, what parents said, what maybe some teacher, anybody, we take it in and we don't
mhm,
realize it becomes like an inner dialogue. And
mhm,
sometimes to the point where we don't realize how much that's affecting how we play out today.
yeah,
So with EFT, it really helps you to kind of release that tie and not be trapped in reactive responses
yeah,
because of those
that's,
old messages. One thing I pointed out when we were watching it is, the parents are very reactive
mhm.
rather than responsive. Something happens, they react to it. The son says he wants to move away. He, talks about his girlfriend and like so all of a sudden they're blaming her. She's the one you're wanting to leave from, she's pulling you away. And so that kind of sealed the deal that this girl could never be good enough for their son. And so whenever they see her, they're just, have you gained weight? Um, and so they're very reactive to things. And we all can be reactive, right? And the more we have old stories playing in our head, the more we don't address the things that are affecting our ability to function. Um,
Well,
as
that's
mature adults, to utilize the parts of our brain that allow us to make complex decisions and to make good choices for our own health and well-being, it's these negative messages that have been
and
playing in our head that lead to our own destructive behaviors and in ways we talk about ourselves that don't benefit us when we're negative self-talk and
so if I could get somebody like Abigail, when she, the more time she would actually put into working on herself would actually shape the other part of her life and how it handles. But I would work on first on getting, like you say, getting the fight or flight down, getting that reflected the negative thoughts out of her, and then also talk to her about how she can then use communication to be able to negotiate the conversation she has is with her parents. It's not, you can't really change them, but how you respond, how
right how you
you
respond.
reflect to it.
And as you're saying that, and I'm thinking about how she acted in the movie, she acts like someone who's gone through some therapy and
Well,
and
yeah.
possibly has done some EFT because she thinks about how she words things. She
Mhm.
doesn't say to her mom, well, he wants to come see dad, but he doesn't want to see you. She says, he needs some more time before he's
That
ready. Um, to see you.
Yeah.
And so she really does a good job of handling it. You see her frustration and everyone needing her now and needing to set boundaries with her parents. And she does do some of that.
Hmm.
She says, she goes to the doctor's appointments and says it's not safe for you to live alone without full-time caregivers. And, her mom keeps firing the caregivers. Now there is the element of she's having to hire the caregivers. Her mom's firing them. She's feeling the need to step in and do these things because her mom's not handling it. Her mom is not accepting what's going on. And so, now looking at, I think the son's Nathan, I could see where the EFT could help him because he's obviously still emotionally hurt from
Yeah.
everything from childhood to the point where it really takes an effort and it takes his sister reaching out to him to say, "Hey, dad is really sick. Can you come see him?" And he does say, I want to come see him, but I don't want mom to be there, right?
Yeah.
And so, but he's not able to say that to his parents. He's still dealing with all that stuff from the
Yeah.
childhood, even though it's probably been 30 years. Um,
Yeah.
and so you see her dealing with it and her, but that burden, what it doesn't show you is, it doesn't quite show you the toll it's taking on her emotionally and what the
No.
process, what she had to go through to get to a healthier state of being. Because I think she functions really well.
Yeah.
You think about, how she deals with all of it. She's really handles it well. And obviously, understands the issues her parents have. Her brother didn't even know the father had a mental breakdown a number of years ago and got diagnosed with bipolar disorder to kind of recognize, his behaviors and that element was there and just that she was been very involved knowing what's going on in the family. And how much of that was to her own detriment. Like we don't have that whole backstory, as far as what she had, what it entailed in her life before the point we see in the movie where she's dealing with her parents.
Well, and, I won, in that situation, they didn't have any like pre-talk to any of this. That, and we talk about that a lot. The sooner you can talk to them about this, and they
Well, and
would not be,
obviously these are,
they
they
would,
didn't want to even talk about it while it was happening,
yeah,
let
yeah,
alone ahead of time, right?
yeah,
And that's where, like you said, with EFT, we can only work on ourselves.
yeah,
And if we're not emotionally in a place to handle just a day-to-day things, when something like this happens, then it makes it even more challenging. So even if we have parents who just don't want to even talk about that, they don't want to think about what if that happens, or they have your parents, are similar to this in this film or in a different way, you can't deal with it. Um, how you deal with it,
yeah,
you can affect that. You can't, you can affect that and you can make better choices for yourself. You can set boundaries, even if it's to the point of where you have to walk away. And, in some ways, I think that was what the son needed to do and what was healthy for him. Because what would have happened if he would have stuck around?
yeah. I would.
Um, and yet, you could tell, he was still carrying all that burden of childhood, whereas his sister obviously had dealt with it a lot more. Um,
Well, yeah. I mean, distraction can work good in a situation where when he was just starting out with it, but too much distraction doesn't solve the issue, though. You
okay.
know,
I mean,
you.
he just stepped away. You're saying
But I mean,
distraction.
well, that's he moved away. That was a distraction. Um, Part of his distraction is walking away from it, getting away from it, which is like I say, nothing terrible about distraction, but
Yeah,
you keep it up.
he didn't really deal with it.
Yeah,
He didn't, yeah. And it was, they kind of pushed him away. And
yeah,
so, he didn't quite, yeah. Well, I'm just being able to say, this is what I need for myself right now. And they didn't say the age that he was when that happened. It was hard to tell if it was early 20s or late teens. Um,
and
so it's just interesting to look at these films and think about these things, especially now, we'll have to pull out something that's a little bit older to look at as far as how they handle these
yeah,
situations
that's
and dealing with our feelings and other people's expectations. The mom put a lot of expectations on everybody, really. She was very reactive and gave unsolicited advice. She didn't want to accept the fact that her father was ill. There's a very touching moment when she feels like he has to eat. If he keeps eating, he needs to eat or he'll die. And there's a birthday party and he doesn't want to eat. And she's pushing cake into his mouth. And she's like, he needs to eat because otherwise he'll die. And her daughter has this moment with her and it's like, yeah, he's dying. He is dying. This is what's happening. And she hit that's that moment of tearfulness because she doesn't want to lose her husband, but she doesn't want to face things either. Um, and then she makes it more about her. There's a little bit of a narcissism there. It's like, who knew my cake would be such a thing? And I think it was a really good cake. It's kind of her coping mechanism. She doesn't want to own these feelings that she has. Um, the other underlying theme that I found in this is I'm fine. Everyone's fine. Everything's fine. There's a moment where sh her dad says he's fine, mom says fine, and Abigail's like everyone's fine, right? People respond that way, but they don't really mean that, right? You ask people how they're doing, and it's kind of how are you? Fine. It's just what we say to people. It's just an acknowledgement. But in reality, things are wrong oftentimes, and people don't want to admit that things are wrong, and we'll say we're fine when we're not really fine. It's that dismissing of discussing difficult things and dealing with issues and not, the daughter, somehow the daughter managed to get the caregivers coming in there, even though she kept firing caregivers, she kept hiring new ones. And, um, some might totally resist the caregiver being there at all. But this mom didn't want to be the one taking him to the bathroom and didn't want to be doing all those things to the point where if the caregiver wasn't there, he said he needs to go to the bathroom. And she's like, Abigail, your dad needs you. Like she wanted to push it off on her daughter to take care of it. And there was sort of an underlying theme of that the daughter was more emotionally available with the dad, and there was more of that kind of connection there. And so the dad, when he was ill and needing more help, he asked for Abigail because she would be there and she would listen and support him. And his wife was not dealing with
Yeah.
the fact that he was sick and was, had this illness and
She,
didn't want to be his caregiver, which, in some ways that makes sense. It's your partner in life. You don't really want to be their caregiver. And some people feel obligated to and do that. Some people resist it, do it resentfully. But if you have the finances to have someone else step in so that you don't have to be the caregiver as much as just being the spouse, right? It takes a toll to have a marriage and then all of a sudden one person is the caregiver of the other.
and like you said, she kind of played with this. That I think it's kind of a back of mind thing, but thinking that he could get better. I think he
Yeah, but
kind of
she was
kind
in
of in that.
well, she kept finding a doctor. She wanted a doctor to fix him. She even said something to that effect.
Yeah.
She kept getting opinions from other doctors and more opinions, and they're just was not going to accept, because she did love him. They saw glimmers of the relationship. They'd been married a long time, and a lot of relationships like this, there are problems with it, but it doesn't mean there weren't tender moments and there weren't connections and there weren't, he says, she's the best thing ever. So you don't know like they're how they met and how they were as young adults, right? We all and what trauma they had with their own childhoods, right? There's so many different
Yeah.
elements of things that affect us and how we deal with it.
I mean, there was a mention, like he mentioned that if he would have said some of that about moving out, his dad would have slapped him upside the head and lost all
Right.
his teeth, and he would have deserved it. I love that.
Yeah. Um, and people's, you don't like the way your parents were, but you're gonna parent that way because that's the way it was when I was a kid, or
Um,
you do things different and you say, you don't, if I was did this when I was your age, my parents wouldn't have accepted it. And um, you should be grateful, that we're willing to listen. And you can go the other extreme with it and give all that guilt. about it. Um, so there's just, lots of relationship things to look at here, which was what we've done. And I hope that you did not listen to this before watching the film,
Yeah.
but I hope
Uh,
you can enjoy the film as well. And, those touching moments. It's kind of the film that, like, when we went back again, we were just kind of skimming through because we just watched this a week ago, not even, um, to pick up on these elements of the relationship and to pick up on, like, I missed out on some things that he had slapped his daughter once. Like, I totally had overlooked that. And my
yeah.
dad was never physical with me like that growing up. And I was relating to him as my dad in some aspects. And so I somehow my brain didn't even process like that he had done that. And you pointed it out, and I was like, what? Um, but just looking at the whole dynamic of it. I took some quotes from the movie, and the one is um the son says is he's tired of the author author
Uh, uh,
why can't I say that word?
Now you got me authoritarian.
Authoritarian
Uh,
BS. He calls it out. He labels it that he's tired of it, right? Because we don't often name things and own it, right? And I'm just looking over my notes.
were there
Um,
other tips, other
Yeah, because you wondered why was he willing to go back and see his dad and not his mom? And
I think I kind of,
the
I think it's the fact that she was arguing to get him out just as much as the dad was. So
well,
it's kind of like,
there's a scene where she asks her brother that, and he says it was much more tangible with dad. Like, you knew what you were getting. It was
um,
obvious. It was outright. Whereas mom was passive aggressive and mom was undermining and relentless um and he could deal with the way his father was, but the way his
um,
mom was, just that was too much for him. Um, just looking over my notes. So we're going to review some other TV shows and movies and just looking at these components, and it can be very reflective and to see these dynamics and to understand how important, conversation is. And okay, so this is where you're at. Well, what can you do about it, right? Rather than being like, well, this is just my parents are this way and there's nothing I can do about it. And it's like, well, are you going to just choose to be miserable? You can make choices for yourself and how you handle things. Even when we can't change other people, right? We can only change um, ourselves and how we handle things. There was a moment with, I think it was our middle child. She was maybe in her mid to late teens and talking about something. And I said, other people's opinions of you are none of your business. And she was like, "What?" Um, but other people can have judgments of us, and that's on them. Other people's judgments are their judgments, and it's really not about us, right? If we're taking on how other people are judging us, we're giving our power away. Because everyone has their opinions about people and their judgments and their stuff. And if you let that affect you um,
yeah, that's
and
hard
as
to.
a young child, well, yeah, but this was, she was getting older, and it's, kind of realizing that you've got to be confident in yourself no matter what other people think.
That's hard for teenagers to grasp at that point. But yeah,
And even a very young adult to grasp. Yeah, because
yeah,
she might have even been more like 18, 19 or something
yeah.
when I said that to her. I wouldn't have said that to a real young kid, but so we'd love to hear from you, right? We'd like to have these conversations and reflect on conversations in the how things are portrayed in the media and movies and TV shows. And
Maybe we could ask a question to the audience. But what I know, just what film for you might have sparked some of this same conversation.
sure, and there's yeah,
So if you can think of that and you want to put that in our comment or let us know, and we'll be happy to expound on that. We'll look at that movie too.
We'd love your thoughts and intakes on this wonderful film, As They Made Us by Mayim Bialik, that she wrote and produced and directed, I believe. And it was powerfully done, and there was so much there. I'd love to hear your input and your ideas and your comments and things, and love to have discussions about this. It's nice that there are now TV shows and things that explore these topics, like when This Is Us came out, the TV show, and it was really about exploring the relationships with people over time and the different generations and things. And it was
On their
kind of
death.
refreshing. It was kind of new. This came about in the past 10 years. I can't remember
Well, it
when
talked
it
about
came.
death. It talked about, and when it started to go into things around dementia and things like that. So a lot of talk about that too. So yeah, those are things we can cover too. So we're thankful for you being part of our Focus Healthy Family podcast. If something we talked about today helped you out, please take a moment to subscribe and share this podcast with someone that who might benefit from it. You know. And if things get stressful and panic or overwhelm are becoming part of your daily routine, you might want to consider my EFT Discovery series, which uh, and it talks about tapping and how a lot of times we describe tapping as it's weird but it works. Um, many people start to get skeptical, but after a few sessions, they start to say, "Wow, it really does work. It is something that's good for me." And if you're interested in wellness tips or caregiving resources or more episodes, visit our focushealthyfamily.com or our focushealthyfamilypodcast.com. And make sure to connect with us on social media. On Facebook, we're Focus Healthy Family. On Instagram, we're Focus Healthy Family One, and on YouTube at Focus Healthy Family. New episodes of Focus Healthy Family are broadcast every Thursday morning. Uh, if you know somebody that you think would be good for speaking on our podcast, we would love to hear that too. And know that I go around and I can speak to your organization, caregiver groups, whatever that might be. Um, uh, and talking about reducing stress and how, like what we talked about here in this episode. For more information about booking Don to speak at your location, please reach out to schedule a presentation or workshop. And remember, how you speak to your children and your loved ones today shapes their future and yours.